Welcome my friends, this is Dave from Fascinating Facts and we will be looking at the data about the topic of vampires. Today we look at part 2 of a 3-part series on vampires exploring the terrifying Upior. Upior. In part 1 we explored the facts about the ancient Vrikolacas, who were more like zombies. However, the precursor to Bram Stoker's Dracula was the Upior vampire. The word Upior originated from the Old East Slavic word Upir, who was a demonic being from Slavic and Turkic folklore. It is suggested that the term Upior and their belief in them spread across the Eurasian steppes through the migrations of the Kipchak human people, after having its origins in the regions surrounding the Volga River. The modern word vampire derives from the Old Slavic language and Turkic word onpir, with the addition of the sound V before a large nasal vowel, on, characteristic of Old Bulgarian. The idea of an Upior being a demonic entity that had possessed a dead body shifted over time to the belief that the Upior was a dead loved one, who had been cursed, and they would now hunt you down, drain your blood, and possibly turn you into the undead. Origin, appearance, and activity of the Upior. An Upior was a person cursed before death. A person who died suddenly, or someone whose corpse was desecrated. Other origins included a dead person over whom an animal jumped, suicide victims, witches, unchristened children, and those who were killed by another Upior. It was believed that those who were different in a community were potential Upior candidates such as redheads, the left-handed, those with a limp, having a unibrow, a double set of teeth, or with a gray mark on their back, and anyone of a different religion. Suspicious traits among the living also included walking by moonlight, having a big head, or no armpit, or pubic hair. Women who died during or after childbirth were particularly vulnerable to the transformation. It was feared that they would return to the orphaned child as Upiors to feed upon it at night. That is why in Silesia, for example, those who died in childbirth were buried by the edge of the cemetery, near the wall. In terms of physical appearance, an Upior looked like the same person in life but pale, and at times they would look bloated from all the blood they had drunk. How the Upiors hunted people. Upiors drank human blood, and used their superhuman strength to tear their victims to shreds. They could also kill with their breath or shrieks. They harassed people at night, making them suffocate or sleepwalk. There were claims of husbands and wives becoming Upiors and visiting the widowed spouse after death. They would do the chores they did during their lifetime and sometimes harass the family. Upiors arrived at night carrying their heads in their arms, or if the head was not detached, with glowing wolf-like eyes. Some of them caused menace during daytime, climbing up bell towers and killing everyone who heard their shriek. Cattle and human plagues were often blamed on witches or Upiors, causing the communities to accuse and lynch innocent people. Signs of an Upior. When local people suspected that a dead person had become an Upior, they would dig up their body. They would look for the signs of the Upior, such as a lack of rigor mortis, a flushed face, or blood beneath the nails, were signs that a deceased person could become an Upior. The signs of its misdeeds among family or neighbors could be fatigue, pallor, sweating, or recurring nightmares. A Upior could haunt its family if the family burned the photograph or portrait of the deceased. A dead person buried in an old shirt could also become an Upior. One way to recognize an Upior was to have an innocent child ride a horse to a cemetery and have them indicate the grave of the Upior. A Upior could be seen in the mirror in the evening, so in the Sirads region people would not look into mirrors after dusk. Dead people thought to be Upiors had garlic, bricks, or iron chunks placed in their mouths before burial. Branches of wild rose, hawthorn, or blackthorn were put into their coffins. The coffins were sprinkled with poppy seed, so the Upiors would have a chore picking all the seeds up to occupy them. Another method of keeping the Upiors busy was to give them little knots or nets or other small things to untangle in the grave. If a person thought to be an Upior died, or if someone's grave was believed to be an Upior's grave, a vampire burial was performed. The head could be cut off and put between the legs of the corpse. The corpse could be burned, nailed to the coffin, or repositioned to lie face down. Historically, some people once thought that those who died of tuberculosis were actually an Upior due to the blood around the mouth of the corpse. If an Upior harassed a human at night, the remedy was to stop the Upior returning to its grave. At dawn it would disappear or change into black tar. Another protective measure was to drink the Upior's blood or eat soil off its grave. Real-life examples of people hunting an Upior. Near Slupia, a young man who committed suicide due to unrequited love was thought to be an Upior. After burying him in a secluded hole, the Upior supposedly appeared and attacked people and cattle. It disappeared when the rooster called at dawn. Near Warsaw, a body found on the road was treated as a potential Upior, and branches were thrown over it. In spring, those stacks of branches were burned, so that the soul of the dead underneath would be purged of its sins. Near Krakow, a way to free an Upior's soul was recorded in 1847. One was supposed to stake the Upior's head with a nail, and then put paper with writings by a teacher or professor underneath its tongue. Then a priest would be asked to cut the Upior's head and reposition it face to the pillow in the coffin. In Liski village, a story was told about a woman who found an Upior in one of 3 coffins at night. She cut its liver out to make a meal for her husband. The Upior later harassed the family until they fell ill and died. In Lubelski, the dead were buried face down with hands tied with blessed herbs to prevent them from becoming Upiors. In Pokutia, a Ruthenian woman who was said to be loved by an Upior was taken out of her house after her death via a hole made in a wall, and then buried at the crossroads in accordance with her wishes. A story from a 1701 journey to Mykonos described a days-long fight between the locals and an Upior. The deceased man supposedly entered houses, threw candles, and scared families so that they would sleep outside. His heart was taken out and burned by the sea, and when this measure combined with prayers did not help, the exhumed body was burned entirely. Near Gradiska, until the end of the 19th century, a story was told about a dead father haunting his son and asking for food. After one visit, 6 family members fell sick and died. After a commission examined the body and decided it looked unusual, the father was deemed an Upior, the heart was staked, and the body burnt. So, the fear about Upiors was very real to people, and at times villagers would become hysterical with fear and dig up dead bodies or lynch those who were deemed different in order to purge their fear. There will be more about the effects of fear and vampires in part 3 of our series. Fascinating facts summary. The top facts about Upiors. 1. Upiors come from Slavic and Turkic folklore, and they were thought to be cursed people who came back from the dead to attack and kill the living. 2. Upiors are undead who drink blood, and the idea of Upiors would terrify local people just as much as it scares people today. 3. Upiors are an early concept of the vampire, of loved ones becoming undead and hunting their communities. 4. People considered different or considered an outsider were thought to be a potential Upior. This meant that discrimination and prejudice at the time could target anyone who was different as a social scapegoat. 5. People who died of tuberculosis were thought to be vampires due to blood being at the mouth of the corpse, fueling vampire belief. Well, that's a wrap for the fascinating facts about the Upiors. If you liked the video, then hit the subscribe button and look out for part 3 of our vampire series, Are Vampires and the Undead Real?